Welcome to the XY Advisor podcast. To join a global community of financial advisors sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice, head to xyadvisor.com. G'day, how's it going? Clayton here with the CEO of the AFA, Kewin. Mate, how's things?
Hey Clayton, I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Very good. I'm pretty excited to have you here. It's always great to have the AFA on the XY podcast. And there's obviously, like everything in financial services, there's a lot going on right now. But it's great to grab a little bit of your time to discuss some of the more, pressing things. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is APRA last year came out and said that the sustainability of the life insurance industry as a whole is basically non-existent, and all the insurance companies have been fighting to give extra benefits so that they turn up higher in the recommended list on X plan, but they've pushed it so far, and advisors, I've got to say, have done such a great job of claiming for their clients that it's tipped everything into unsustainability as far as I can tell. And so APRA came out and said, all right, none of the, enough of this. We're getting rid of a bunch of things. We're pulling the benefits back, and the costs have to go up. From a utilitarian point of view, high level, I get why that's happened. I think, it's better having a life insurance industry rather than not. And, but at the same time,
that's true.
A lot. Yeah, that's true. A lot of the sort of the flack, I guess you could say, has fallen at the hands of advisors. Do you think, APRA and the industry needs to do a better job of helping advisors educate their clients, or how do you think advisors should handle the conversations, moving forward with their clients?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a topical issue. Can I just go back to your intro, though? I think you've underplayed the fact that there's a lot going on at the moment. I mean, I thought last year was a challenge, and then I thought the year before that was a challenge. The challenges that we're facing right now are unbelievable. I'm not going to say unprecedented, because I know that that's been overused, but I've never seen the state of the industry as such at the moment, and in doing so, we're seeing sort of some of the best, mostly some of the best, and obviously some bad things come out of it as well. But mostly, I think we're seeing the best in a lot of parties, in advisors, in what they do, really coming to the fore and helping their clients at a time of uncertainty. But we're seeing, it's really great to see just a lot of good intent and cooperation at all levels of government, regulators, associations, and advisors. Everyone just want to get the best outcome. So I think, it is an unusual time, a lot of challenges, but a lot of people are working together to try and get the best outcome. So having said that, yep. I know you asked a specific question about about income protection, and look, this is obviously, it sort of was a bit of a sleeper just before Christmas. A lot of advisors didn't see the announcement from APRA. It did highlight a really interesting thing. I've had more to do with APRA in the last 3-4 months than I have probably in the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah. And it highlighted the fact that there's no direct line of communication between APRA and advisors. Their responsibility is to the responsible entities, so the life insurers, and they're the ones that they communicate with. And so advisors, and clients are obviously part of the cycle, but not part of the direct communication. And I think that's been part of our challenge insofar as that this issue around income protection has been building and building and building for some time. Advisors have done what their job is to do, and that is to deliver the best cover they can for their clients and continue to review those contracts and ensure that their clients are in the best position available. And that's what they've been doing. Behind the scenes, there's been a lot of concern about the increasing claims, the duration of the claims and the size of the claims, and obviously that's having an impact on profitability. APRA, through a few warning shots over the bow of the insurers over the last couple of years, concerned about it. And because of the competitive environment that we are in, I mean, we are in one of the most sophisticated advisor markets in the world, and advisors know what they should be giving their clients. And so the competition has been such that they're continuing to offer their clients the most competitive products. And that's their job. The current challenge is those products, as we've seen, are no longer profitable. It's been an amazing challenge over the last couple of years for advisors just to retain business, talking to clients through the continuous and sustained premium increases on income protection. And so advisors recognise that that's not sustainable either. So everyone, I think, the average advisor understands that what we need is a sustainable product with consistent pricing and certainty. And so I think we're going to head into that. It's just the period of transition where there's a great deal of uncertainty is what's creating the most concern at the moment.
Yeah, when I think about it, I think it's almost like the advisors beat the house. It's almost like the advisors are card counters, and we've sat at the blackjack table and we figured it out, and we claimed so successfully for so long that we bankrupted the house, almost to the point that the reinsurers were looking at this thing going, no, I'm not sure if I'm willing to take the risk. I am actually glad that ASIC, from a top-down point of view, tackled it head on, because undoubtedly behind the scenes, the insurance companies would have been sweating bullets for the last few years. And I can't quote the losses off the top of my head, but they were astronomical. And having an industry that people can turn up to day in, day out and deliver value to their clients is so important that, on one hand, I definitely take my hat off to the advisors who got the best and delivered the best to their clients and broke the bank, so to speak. But now we've kind of, okay, congratulations, you won, but you want it to be sustainable. So, if I put my advisor hat on, I go, it's tough because the conversations, I'm telling client A that, the price of this, level premium is X, and we can expect this over the next few years. And yet now I've got to keep going back to them almost year after year after year and talk to them as if it's a stepped policy. And that obviously, has its own. So it's almost like the person that suffers the consequence is the advisor having the conversation with the client, which is a massive shame. But at the end of the day, I think there should be more done by APRA, and you've sort of identified that hole. More done by APRA to say, actually, advisors, I realize we put a press release out on, as you mentioned before, a sleeper at the end of the year in amongst everything else that was going on. But
and don't get me wrong, I'm not implying that was done intentionally.
No,
it's not like putting the, as the government might say, putting the rubbish out on a Friday night.
No, absolutely. They probably weren't even thinking about that at all.
No, APRA's, and that's exactly it. APRA's, sole purpose is to ensure that there's financial stability in the institutions that are making promises to the customers that clients are also making promises to. And so that's their job. I completely understand that. I just want to be careful though, because you talk about advisors beating the house. I mean, advisors' role is to provide the best cover, the most suitable cover to their clients. Yes. Now, whether that's the cheapest or whether that's the most comprehensive but more expensive, that is based on the needs of the client. So the advisors have been offering the cover that is most suitable to their clients. Yes. And they're the contracts that are on the market.
Yeah.
As you say, though, the challenge is the contracts on the market were no
Too
longer
generous.
profitable. And as you also said, no one wanted to be the first mover. Imagine being the insurer to say, look, guys, I know that I know you can get this cover 30% cheaper somewhere else, but ours is a responsible contract, so tell your client to come here. I mean, it's an impossible sale. So
absolutely,
yes, the insurers needed APRA to come out with the announcement, but it's not to say that it hasn't been difficult. And particularly, the strongest feedback I've had is around agreed value, and obviously around level premiums on existing business, which has been a real challenging issue for many advisors. And agreed value is what APRA would argue defies the laws of indemnity. And apart from New Zealand, we are the only market that offers agreed value. Now, we would argue that you could have agreed value, you just have set limits. But my feedback in talking to all of the insurers and APRA and other stakeholders is that agreed value is just not sustainable in any shape or form going forward.
Yeah, because the last thing, and this is a really interesting angle, if advisors' job is to do everything in the best interest of their clients, you're in a really awkward position as an advisor, because what if your advisor gets paid, your client gets paid more money by being on insurance claim than if they'd gone back to work? Oh, that's a tricky one, right? So now what's in the best interest of the client? Is the best interest of the client to become a constructive, contributing, purpose-driven member of society where they're doing things and they're active? Or is it to lay on the couch and watch Netflix but make more money? That is a super tricky point of view, because one way would be to look at it, I mean, I don't want to interpret the law incorrectly, but one interpretation could be, well, you've put your client in a worse financial situation by suggesting they get back to work, so you're not operating in the best interest of your client. The other is, well, we pretty much know that if someone's on claim for more than especially 5 years, then the cascading effects to their mental health is worse, and the cascading effects to their physical health is worse, and it's almost like they're between a rock and a hard place. So I kind of understand if the industry can work its way from in any environment for the client being in technically a better situation by not working, we've just got to move away from that, from a society and from an individual best interest to the client, to get them becoming a contributing member of society again.
The best, and we've seen this with some of the initiatives the government's introduced in the current situation. I mean, the best cohabitation of insurance is with clients is the fact that if they are unable to work, then their income protection will replace their income because they're unable to work, and provide an incentive where possible to help them return to work. And as you say, return to be a productive part of the workforce, to be a productive part of their family, society, have self-esteem and retain their health. The reality is, though, sometimes that can't happen. And for some people in an indemnity contract, but depending on how their business was in the year or two before they went on claim, they may actually have paid 10 years premiums, but because of a downturn in income or because of taking maternity leave or something, they may not necessarily be able to receive a benefit that they've been paying for many years. And there's sort of the things we've been arguing. We made a joint submission from the Joint Associations Life Insurance Task Force. That's the AFA and FPA combined. Members, advisors from both of those, and we made a submission to APRA along those lines, ensuring that pre-disability income was recognised for people who, have had job interruptions, have fluctuations in income, particularly self-employed small business operators whose income fluctuates, to ensure that their pre-disability income, reflects the average over the last few years, not necessarily just when they were not claimed.
Yeah, no, hands down. Pivoting just slightly into the FASIA exam. I know you guys have been doing a little bit of work on with COVID, the pandemic, the in-person exams are sort of, out of vogue at the moment, obviously. Online exams are all the rage. And then there's extensions. So there's actually kind of two little topics I wanted to cover. What's going on with online exams, and is there an extension?
So I guess answering the second first. So when you're talking about the extension, so the legislation to extend the exam date and the degree date.
Yep.
We know that the legislation for those extensions passed through the lower house. Unfortunately, it did not go through the upper house before Parliament was ceased and deferred until August, which is unfortunate because our understanding is both the government and the opposition are supportive of those extensions. We know that many MPs on both sides and the opposition spokesperson, Stephen Jones, has received personal visits from advisors expressing the need for those extensions, and they want to support them. The government has said to us that the extensions will pass this year. We've also contacted Stephen Jones' office from the opposition, and they have said that they will support the extensions this year. However, that's great, but if we have to wait till August, that doesn't leave much time. If something further happens, is unpredictable, I trust implicitly what is being said in the right intent, but we have suggested, that there could be means by regulation where those extensions can be put through if there is further delay. But, I would suggest everyone work on the basis those extensions will go ahead. In terms of the online exam, you said they're all the rage. I'm not sure if they're all the rage. FASIA has a job to do. FASIA has to work to the guidelines, the legal time frame.
Yep.
It's not FASIA's job to change the rules if if those extensions haven't gone through.
Yep.
Obviously, you can't have face-to-face exams or exams en masse, so they've done their best to deliver an online exam. It has had an impact. The last sitting of the 2,200 students who enrolled, I believe, talking to Stephen Glenfield yesterday, only about 500 sat that exam. Many pulled out because they just didn't have time to adapt to the different way of doing it.
Gotcha.
It seemed to be very complicated. You had to have a specific setup, you had to be supervised, you had to have a mirror, your camera, and a lot of advisors were just not sure how that would work for them. I know FASIA is doing its best to try and improve the situation, whilst at the same time as making sure it is still a fully supervised exam.
Is there a one-pager? I actually haven't seen the specific instructions. Is there like an infographic or something to make it easy as to what's required?
I believe you get the information once you've enrolled for the exam, and this is what we talked about with FASIA yesterday, the fact that it would, FASIA is conscious firstly that their priorities and what's happening in advisors' worlds at the moment, the priorities are sort of realigned somewhat, and so they don't want to be coming out with more information about code of ethics and things like that at the moment if it's not necessary. Yeah. However, our conversation did recognise the fact that more clarity around the exams for those people who do want to sit it would be worthwhile. The fact that they are offering to help people beforehand to test their setup to make sure, because some people are concerned their computer's not appropriate or they don't have the bandwidth. So they will, in working with ASA, who's running the exam, enable people to do a test beforehand and provide the information that you get when you enrol prior to that, so that people can get a sense of what it actually entails, rather than enrol first and now this is what I need to do. And that's what frightens people off. when they were told, you
Absolutely.
might have to disable your firewalls. That obviously sent large institutionally based licensees into a spin because you just don't disable firewalls. Now, our understanding is no one had to do that for the last exam, and these are the messages that FSEA wants to get out to encourage more people, if they do want to do it online, that they can do that.
What would be, it'd be awesome. I should touch base with Stephen. It'd be really good to get that information out just to make sure. It's always, you always want as much information as possible, right? It's just human nature to know, okay, this is the thing that I have to do now. Okay, I got to set up a mirror. Okay, that's weird. Okay, I got to put it here. Okay, but honey, do we have a mirror? Right? It's like you've
already got yours set up, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. Where you just you might have to go buy a mirror, for goodness sake. Like you never stuff like that. You kind of gonna know, well ahead of time.
And that was exactly the thing. It was just too much too soon for people. Yep. But in fairness. And I don't want to sound like I'm sort of, a mouthpiece for FSEA. In fairness, there wasn't much choice. They can't just cancel the exams, because legally at the moment, they know that they're obliged to have those exams so that people can sit them.
Yep.
So they're doing their best to make sure that people can actually sit the exams if they want.
Yeah. Yep. No, makes sense. Yeah, actually, touching on the rules and regulations, because I was just sitting there thinking about that. FSEA is, I guess, a little bit more bound in legislation to their scope and what they can do and they can't do. And not even a pandemic really changes anything for them, unless it's, of course, written in the legislation that in the event of a pandemic, you're allowed to make the changes.
And I tell you what, there's a number of contracts I've been looking for that wording. I can tell you.
Exactly.
I think we're all approaching things very differently than how we used to.
That's so funny. It's so true, though. But I'd imagine that there are aspects, maybe not FSEA, but maybe other parts of the rules and regulations that, and I know you guys have been doing a little bit of work in trying to make life a bit easier for advisors because, as we started this podcast, every year just seems to be insanely more difficult than the last. And what used to be, an unbelievable event is now last week's news because we're dealing with something else. And so, but those things don't go away, right? And they sort of just keep on adding up and adding up and adding up. And have you guys at the AFA had any luck in terms of being able to put arguments forward and asking to make things a little bit easier, considering, going through the contracts, did you see the word pandemic? And what did you find to be able to sort of say, hey, wait a second, wind this back a little bit because everything is happening at once. And then all of a sudden people are dropping dead left, right and center. So we need to sort of give people some breathing room. What have you guys come up with?
Yeah, there's a lot in that. For starters, even before COVID-19, we were already talking to the government and the regulators about trying to remove red tape. We know there was a timeline for the Royal Commission recommendations. And I guess if one of the good things to come out of the current situation is that a lot of the timeline for different things is being reviewed. But of course, that's something that we do want to make sure we get some certainty as to what that revised timeline looks like. But at the moment, the key thing for advisors is the fact that you've got clients, particularly clients, retirees, pre-retirees, in a heightened sense of panic about their superannuation, their investments. They're wanting to talk to advisors, and they need to do it in a timely manner. And advisors need to talk to as many clients as possible. And that is one thing that's happening. A lot of advisors have been, you can get this sense of being invigorated by the fact that they're really showing their purpose now at the moment because they're helping their clients to settle down, calm them in a very uncertain environment, at least with their investments. But it does mean that some of the current rules are a bit restrictive, and that's why we have been talking to the government and the regulators about some measures to try and relieve that. And we saw some announcements early this week, which are common sense announcements around the flexibility around the use of a record of advice. The fact that you could have people in a different licensee see the client and use a record of advice, which makes sense. So if an advisor is away or too busy with other clients, they can do that. And, extension of the deadline for provision of critical advice from 5 days to 30 days just makes sense in the current environment where there's a lot more people talking to their advisor and advisors can't actually see people face to face.
Yeah.
So they make sense. Some of the other things that we've suggested is, allowing clients up to 90 days to sign opt-in notices rather than 30 days. That would make sense going forward, simply because it's just harder for advisors to see clients, face to face. And simple things like being able to verify documents online through video means or something, rather than face-to-face, witnessing and JP witnessing, etc.
That you've just touched on probably, I would say, the number one spoken about issue on XY at the moment is wet signatures.
Yeah.
And that appears to be, to my mind, I know some emergency measures have been brought in, but it seems like some of the products aren't keeping up with that. So the product, even if, the wet signatures aren't necessary for the next 30 days or whatever it is, I haven't looked in depth at it, but I know some of the people have been saying, well, whatever the rule is or whatever the softening of that rule is, there's a lot of products out there that aren't listening to that. So they still require it internally. It seems, I mean, can you guys do anything with that? It seems really difficult, I'd imagine, to get a private company. I don't want to name any of them because I don't know which ones are and aren't, but it's a very big companies out there. And is that something, the AFA can walk up to the big companies and say, hey, you're making life pretty difficult for advisors. Can you chill out a bit?
We've done what we're doing with a number of the issues that are coming up, and we talk to the product providers all the time. If something comes up that it comes up regularly through our members, and I will encourage anyone out there to give us feedback on any of the challenges, because we're continuing to sort of gather a list, but importantly make solutions.
Yes.
So if it's a product provider, that's really coming up now as being a differentiator in the marketplace, and people are really sort of looking at the product providers that are making it more difficult. I know, talking to some of them behind the scenes, they're rapidly trying to improve their processes.
Yeah.
Because what was a nice to have in a normal environment is now critical.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's amazing how sometimes things that you don't think are that important become extremely important. And so from a product provider point of view, advisors are letting them know, as well as we are, loud and clear, where, if one provider can do it and the other one can't, it will tell for some time, because advisors will make a choice as to, their recommendations going forward. In terms of legislation, if by law you're required to get, signatures or face-to-face identification, you can't actually do that at the moment, then we need some relaxation, so that that they can actually get the verification necessary without having face-to-face witnessing.
Someone was saying maybe making a public list of the companies that are forcing you to still take wet signatures. So that there's a bit of a landing page for advisors to go to and say, okay, well, which ones are dead ends right now? Because it's not like, with this everything that's going on, some advisors are having to put on more staff, and because of the amount of insurance claims or not so much claims, sorry, but insurance work, new insurance. And so it's not like because of this less work is going on, but if all of a sudden you're bashing your head up against a wall because a company wants to, have wet signatures, then that's going to be such an insanely unavoidable problem for the advisor. That there needs, it might be not a bad idea to have some sort of landing page where, once the company has said we're good to go with digital signature, then, they go on the landing page, just as, not that you guys aren't doing anything else,
Yeah, look, even before all this, I'm forever getting, you should name and shame this company because they didn't pay this claim, or you should name and shame this company because they don't offer this online facility that this company does. We are in an open marketplace. It is a competitive environment, and companies will, they'll succeed or not based on what they can provide. However, there are times when you need to have maybe some government influence, or some sort of unified approach. And if I can give an example of where we've asked for a unified approach, is that we would like, at the moment, there are people who have been stood down and are not receiving an income, and we know the government's done a great job in providing some stimulus, but it doesn't necessarily replace everyone's income. So insurance premiums, at the moment, some people cannot afford to pay their insurance premiums. What we would like to see is a consistent approach across the board, because what you're talking about, we can't sort of now take how an insurance company is dealing with premium payments and choose whether or not we deal with that company, because it's at the wrong time. They're already loyal clients. All we would like to see is some consistency, so advisors don't have to, on a case-by-case basis, go to the insurers. And this would save the insurers time as well.
Absolutely.
A lot of effort in having to negotiate each time whether a client deserves to have their premiums, a premium holiday. I know there are different contracts. Some contracts provide premium holidays provisions. Some do so without cover. Some do so with cover. So it's a bit of a minefield. I think that's a perfect example where perhaps as an industry, and I have talked to the insurers and the FSC about this, as an industry there can be a consistent approach so that the general public doesn't lose trust in an industry at a critical time.
Here's a question that I think you and very few people would be able to answer, and that is, what do politicians think of advisors and about the advice industry as a whole? Because are they looking at, obviously we're in an environment that's not the result of the incumbent politicians, right? It's not that just because you're the treasurer, everything is your fault. No, it's like you're in that position, and every decision that's ever come before you, you're living in the repercussions of. And so advice is I just don't know a better word to use. It's just been the professional whipping boy for the last few years. And do people in government realize that?
The short answer, I would say, is yes. If you're saying, do they realize that advisors have been subject to an inordinate amount of scrutiny, pressure, regulatory change over the last couple of years. I said at our roadshow at the beginning of this year, and I'm glad we got the roadshow in just before,
well done.
Before the doors got shut, that I thought we'd turn the corner. We know the government had a roadmap to get the Royal Commission recommendations in, but outside of that, there seemed to be a commitment to look at the reform and to look at ensuring that advisors could actually conduct their business profitably and be able to give affordable advice to more people, because they've met more advisors. This is a critical thing. I'd love to say it's all because of the work of the AFA and myself and Phil Anderson and other associations. A lot of the influence comes from advisors, and it comes from advisors who have visited their local members. And the time that we can have the most impact is if I can walk into a minister and they have met with their constituents who have explained to them what their challenges are, but importantly, what the solutions are. Because one of the feedback, the strongest feedback I got initially from politicians was that we get a lot of advisors come to us, but they only come to us with problems.
Yeah.
We need solutions. So the key thing is that we've seen a lot more advisors visit their local members, explain to them, what their business is, how many people they employ, how many clients they look after, what sort of things they do for their clients, but also explain to them and physically shown them the wads of paper that they have to deliver a client. And we did that recently. I mean, we've got some great supporters in the government. Bert Van Manen has long been an advocate for advisors. Amanda Stoker more recently, and they've, as well as Senator Jane Hume, I must say, who's been, since she's come on board. Stuart Robert was very engaging, but Jane has taken it up another level, and she really recognises the challenges, the important role that advisors have, but the important responsibility as well. But they've all looked for practical examples of what the challenges are for advisors, what they do for their clients. And they're very keen to continue to work with us to get to improve the situation, so that we can remove red tape, and we do get rid of all the bad apples, so that we can't be used as the whipping boy that you talked about. Because they can only go on the bad examples that people throw up at them, or the referred examples. And they're getting less and less, even though the scrutiny has been greater. Because whenever there's more scrutiny, you're going to see the bad examples.
Absolutely.
But the numbers are less and less.
I always come back to, so for example, I was having a really good conversation with someone that works in safety, and the conversations that go on in safety land, right? Which are the best way I could describe it is, do you remember the movie Fight Club?
I remember it. I don't know if I actually saw it.
Oh man, it's such a good film. You definitely got to check it out. So, there's a part in Fight Club where the calculation. Edward Norton's character is trying to figure out the calculation of what it will cost if they get sued by by people, or what's the cost is if they recall the product, right? And then if the cost is more to get sued, then they recall the product. It's a fictional story, but the illustration, I think, is really true. And that is, what business that operates? I can't think of an industry that operates with such piety that nothing can ever go wrong. And the reason I bring this up is, a good mate of mine, speaking to him yesterday, he's a school teacher, another really good example. And he's teaching his class while, laying on the couch in his tracker Dax, right? So this is the story that he's telling me. And I go, why is it that every other industry can rely on the human nature in all the good and the bad that comes with it, but financial advice is held to a standard that is so high? And I got to be really particular with my words here, because I'm not excusing any bad behavior. But what I'm saying is, it feels like the goal of the investigation into financial advice is attempting to eradicate imperfections found in people. Like literally trying to erase and rub out any kind of poor decision making. And like from a theoretical, from a philosophical point of view, I love it. Right? I love it. I think it's great. I just feel like advice has been singled out as almost like the tip of the spear and said, well, actually, what we're aiming for here is something that no other profession, no other occupation can achieve, and that is that no bad thing will ever go on ever. And the reason I'm saying all this is because I, like everyone else in financial advice, would love if every horrible advisor was permanently eradicated and it never again attracted another bad advisor. Like, I would love that. And in fact, it would make my life. Yeah, absolutely. But I know for a fact that next year and the year after and the year after and every single year, there's going to be unscrupulous people that become financial planners and find ways to screw over clients. And I hate that that's true, but it is true. But the exact reality is that's happening in every single profession, in every single industry. And you cannot rub out people doing the wrong thing altogether. And I just feel like a lot of this stuff that's happening is we've just picked financial planning and we've gone, okay, now we're going to do everything we can to ensure that no one could ever make a poor decision ever again. And it's like, well, you can only go so far. And not because I want people to find the cracks in the system, but if you push it to the point that people who aren't like that, which is the overwhelming majority, can't operate successfully, profitably, and enjoy their work, then what you're going to end up with is either no industry or a bunch of people that, as we've seen, are going through such a hard time that they're not surviving it. And I am so, like, I guess I'm probably emotionally attached to this because someone in XY, they recently committed suicide. And I'm just going, is the pursuit of rubbing out anything that can possibly go wrong at the expense of making everyone's life really difficult, is it worth it? Is the cure better than the problem? And I'm not convinced right now with every single thing that's gone on for so long that we're at the right place. I feel like we've gone too far, and I'm glad that the politicians know that.
And look, that is a conversation that I've had a number of times with a number of politicians, and you have to be really careful because every industry goes into Canberra and says the sky is falling, says if you don't do this, then the industry is going to fail. If you don't do this, then we won't vote for you. And so you have to be careful because everyone's coming in with the same message. I do, as I said, believe earlier that the government has recognised that in some areas it's gone too far. Now, in what you were saying, I think we're in agreement that no one is objecting to the fact that we're on a path to professionalism that will get us to a standing with the government, with the consumer, where there are no more excuses. If the government at the moment can be accused by the opposition of having a structure in place that allows imperfections to manifest through institutions, then it's going to be held to account. And so that's the process we're going through. What we just didn't expect, particularly post-Royal Commissions, what we thought was institutional malaise, we didn't expect that the human toll at an advisor level was going to be so great. Because it just followed through, and the impact that it's having, whether it's 515 lookbacks on advisors and institutional licensees,
insane,
whether it's increasing PI costs, increased scrutiny. There's any number of things that are impacting advisors. We just didn't expect it to happen at such a human level. The good thing to come out of this is hopefully, firstly, that we will retain a lot of the experienced advisors that we want to retain if we approach this pragmatically. That's why there's the exam extensions. That's why there's been more flexibility granted at the moment. But we also take the heat off. And that's why we can then start to argue more things like making financial advice tax deductible, making it part and parcel of our daily lives, as opposed to this satellite industry that's tacked onto a massive financial services bubble that obviously has a lot of scrutiny because it's got people's life savings, and it has a compulsory superannuation environment. That's always going to mean that there's going to be closer scrutiny because you've got compulsory superannuation, and therefore you've always got people thinking that that's a gravy train for people to try and pick up and profiteer from.
Yep.
And that's, and people will always have, even if that's not happening, there will always be people who throw those accusations.
Absolutely.
But I do believe the light at the end of the tunnel is the fact that we will be considered to be the profession we deserve to. The passionate advisors who, like you were talking about, they believe in themselves. And one of the disappointing things for advisors over the last few years is the fact that the feeling that other than their clients, no one believed in the good of what they did. Because when you have a Royal Commission or a government saying that this needs to be cleaned up, that has an impact on them and their self-esteem. But they know, and that's why I've seen advisors who've been re-energised in the current environment. Their clients need them and they value them, and that's what keeps them going. That's what keeps them, wanting to get up every day and continue to do that and run their businesses.
Yeah. And which was why that little snarky comment in the Choice magazine was really annoying. Just totally.
It was really annoying for a number of reasons.
Yeah, it was inappropriate and totally unneeded, and kind of like a high school 14-year-old, just like trying to jab in a little elbow for no reason, completely off. It just looked off script. It looked added in. Weird.
I don't see the benefit in such a comment. I said at the outset, one of the positives about the current environment is everyone is working together to get the right outcome. Comments like that are just unhelpful. We want people to feel assured. We want people to know that they can talk to people in a time when they're making financial decisions. They don't want bits of information saying, don't trust this person, trust this person, don't trust this person. I mean, it was an unhelpful, unnecessary comment in what was a very important message. Withdrawing your money from super should be a last resort. That is a great message. Why confuse that message? Oh, by the way, if you're thinking about that, don't talk to a financial advisor. They can't be trusted, effectively, is what Choice said. Yeah. I do not see the motive in that. I think it's doing the consumer. I mean, if choice is supposed to be choice, it's giving people the choice. The choice as to whether they want to access and pay for advice. The choice is whether they want to go to a financial counsellor, or the choice is whether they want to manage themselves. That's what choice is about.
100%. Yeah. It was super annoying. Mate, thank you for your time today. Thanks for covering a bunch of the things that AFA have been recently doing.
You're welcome. I will press if anyone has any suggestions as to how they feel that we can help to communicate to the government or regulators to help them and help their clients in the current environment. Please feel free to give us feedback.
Awesome. Mate, thank you so much for coming on today. And you're on LinkedIn. I'm sure people can connect with you there, keep up to date as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Great to hear. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Clayton. Take care.